Okay, folks, here we go.
Guys, here we go. Let's have a good show.
1B, stand by. Okay,
Yeah.
Yacht, sir.
Yeah,
Take it.
take it at midfield.
Okay,
Just go
take
right
it.
now.
Opposite
Go to
up
camera
well.
3.
Can
3.
you
Go to the gate. Perfect.
you.
Just like that.
I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, graphics 2 is going to be up for the first. Okay.
Take it.
Go right now. Go to camera 3. Go. Yep.
Can you
Go to the gate. Perfect.
Yeah.
Just like that. No music.
I'm going to hand to Q. Sophie.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Radio. Be on radio in the Canal Zone.
All right, guys, mic check.
SCPM.
Go ready.
Okay, Ricky, mic.
Wait for it.
Yep, I am ready.
Wait for it. Wait for it. 2.5.
Willie, mic check.
Yep, let's go.
1B, stand by.
10, 9, 8,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
and we're live.
Okay, and go for it, guys.
Live indeed. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, and 8 p.m. Canal Zone Time. It is happy hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. Ricky, how's it going, man? Happy Friday.
Yes, it is. Happy Friday to everybody. Thank you, like always, for joining us on this beautiful Friday, like Willie says. Again, thank you. We are SCN Canal Zone, happy hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. And this is a podcast, everybody, that's all about the Panama Canal, its history, its founders, its people, also known as Zonians. And tonight, we're going to have a phenomenal show for you guys. More of an informed discussion than anything else. So
Yes,
brace
indeed.
yourself. It's gonna tie into one of the big anniversaries tomorrow, which is Just Cause Day. I think it's gonna be interesting to see how we're gonna put these two things together. Again, not a political show, an informed discussion. So
Yes.
welcome
More of
everybody.
a current events show and a flashback show, which is
And a
going to be
flashback.
interesting. You know, you could almost call it a double flashback show because, you know, we are going to go back to Just Cause. We're a little less than 24 hours away or a little more than 24 hours away from when everything, went
Midnight.
down. But nonetheless, there's a lot of similarities to what went on then with what's going on, a little bit to the east of Panama now in Venezuela. So a lot on the table there to discuss. And again, it's going to flash back to a guest that we had on earlier in the year, two guests that we had on actually, Steve Tochterman from the Canal Zone from BHS, and Jesus Romero, who also served in the Canal Zone. They co-wrote a book that we went over, Final Flight, Queen of the Air, which is a great book about drug smuggling, and really it focused on the air part and some interesting things involving a little town in Texas that doesn't even have an airport and was somehow registering a ton of aircraft that were being used to fly drugs and stuff. And part of it we showed on a map there was interesting because it involved Venezuela and an air corridor that they use there. So it's going to be interesting how that correlates to what's going on now. But instead of being in the air now, we're going to go down on the water because, of course, in the news lately, there's been a lot of talk again with these boats that are getting bombed and what's going on there. So we're going to hear from some folks that have been talking about this, have been researching this on both in an official capacity and as well as, from an authorship, standpoint. So a lot of great information there. But before we do that, hello to our friends in the zone and around the
And a
world.
toast.
Yes,
And a toast.
exactly. A toast
We
first.
can't
Sorry,
start
guys.
without our toast. So toast
Salute,
to all you
everybody.
Zonians and to the eighth wonder of the world.
Yes, and Merry Christmas, everybody. It's time to start saying that. We should have been saying it the whole month. It is the one month where you can really push the holiday throughout the month. But Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy whatever, any holidays out there. But nonetheless, so good evening, Jim. Good to see you. Yes, here we go. Jim and Diane Bradley, good to see you guys. Good evening. Yes, happy fellow Zonians on Fridays. That's what it's all about. Chris, good to see you. Happy Friday from Cincy,
Hey,
Kentucky.
Chris.
Right on.
Yes.
Good to see you, Chris. CZ forever, indeed. That is so iconic, and especially that view that we put on at the end of the show with Sosa Hill, right? And then the guys that did that job, whoever you are, a salute to you guys, man, because carving that into Sosa Hill is something that they did it probably out of just sheer pride and the adventurism and all that good stuff. But I don't think they realized how iconic that image would be and would become. As far as that, I don't know what you want to
It
call
was
it,
a
but
high
that,
school thing. It was all the high school students that would get up there and do that.
yeah, I
think
mean, it was,
maybe you guys, the older guys, can tell us more about it.
yeah, that would be interesting to find out. Yeah,
If
turn
it was at a
Ricky's volume up a little bit.
club or
Yeah,
like,
Ricky, they said turn your volume up a little bit if you can.
Got you. I just gotta speak into the microphone.
Yeah, there you go. But that would be interesting. You're right, to find out what that was all about. If,
Yeah.
if somebody here knew the people, or if somebody here did it, and
I
cut that
remember
in
as a
there.
kid, I remember that the crews going up there. But I don't remember if it was like teams. Like Team A would do it from 1 month, Team B another month,
Right.
or something like that.
Right. Well, I remember when they burned that place down. That was always pretty impressive, because
Hey, Mark Cicero.
you'd have Mark. Good to see you, man. Thanks for our yes. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, and I'll tell you what. I'm a big fan of AI for a lot of different reasons, and I understand a lot of what it does from a productivity standpoint. And Ricky and I have set up a channel now that it's amazing how much we're able to do some show planning and get our stuff ready to go. So yeah, hopefully
We've
it'll.
got the Knicks taken care of, all the technical stuff. We've gotten all
Yeah,
that. taken
fingers
care of.
crossed that it
Fingers
continues
crossed.
that
But
way.
at the end of the day, Willie, it's all about money, because we invest so much.
Yeah, that is
the
true.
more money you spend, the better the technology.
That is
works.
very true. That is very, very true. But nonetheless, it's thank you. We appreciate it, and love you guys. Stepping in
All our
and
sponsors, man,
helping
thank you
out,
so
and then of
much.
course
Yeah.
our sponsors as well, and then you guys bring a lot of banter to the conversation, a lot of engagement and comments. Oftentimes reminding us of things, because that's part of what we're doing here, is going back there so that we all can learn and reminisce. And then in Mark's case, he puts together some really cool songs that they themselves evoke a cool Zonian conversation. So it's a lot of fun, man. I'm glad that we do this show, and I'm glad that we've been able to 100+ shows now that we're doing, and we keep plugging along, man, because it is a lot of fun. It's a blast to do this. So
112.
yeah, right on, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, but anyway, let's get a few announcements. Ricky, I don't know what we have as far as announcements go, if there's much of anything,
the
but
Canal Zone reunion, we have a few things going. The Canal Zone reunion, guys, they just put out. I think there's a new thing to do. What is it? New event, and you're gonna go check out Howard. Howard now, guys. Howard is the future of Panama. It's where all the tech's going, and we spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. How the United States has given Panama this green light to produce chips in Panama,
right?
And there's you guys know the train's going to be stopping there. The bullet train's going to be stopping there, plus all the new highways and bridges. So the Canal Zone Society, the Canal Zone reunion is putting together a go out there for 3.5 hours and go look around, check it out. But you're also going to go check out this brewery they have out there called Cerveceria Clandestina.
Okay.
And for 2 hours, unlimited tasting. So that alone is worth it. But it's a microbrewery, which I know a lot about. So you can go there and see how they're making beer and all that. I think it's going to be great. But it's a new event, and it's Go See Howard. So if you guys are interested in that, go check it out. If you're going to expat in Panama, that would be a great place to invest with all the stuff that's going there in the future. So that's what we have with
Ricky. They said they can't hear you.
They can't hear me. All right. Well, let's Willie, why don't you take over, and I'm gonna just
and I mean, hey, never know, that might be a blessing in disguise, but nonetheless, yeah, no, it's amazing what the other day. It's interesting you mentioned that in Howard and the size and everything that they're adding there. We were in our chat the other day just kind of fooling around with these, for instance, right, and different things. What would have happened if, and especially leading up to Just Cause, where imagine if Just Cause had resulted not in just getting rid of Noriega and ultimately the Panamanian military as a unit, and instead going with what they ended up having, a government and a law enforcement, police force and all. But what if the United States during this invasion had decided, hey, we're gonna take the canal and the Canal Zone back and all that stuff? And I thought, okay, so again, not trying to get into anything political or this, that, or the other. It was just one of these, for instance, right? If it was, imagine if, and then we're thinking, okay, so if that was the case in 1989, which is when this happened, right? And then what would happen if we fast forward now to 2025? What would the canal zone be looking like, if the United States in 1989 had gone back in and said, hey, you know what, this ain't going to work. We're going to have the canal zone back. And so one of the things that I theorized was that it would continue to grow. And of course, many Zonian kids, like perhaps myself and others, would have stayed there and tried to get jobs there. And if that was the case, where would they expand to? And I thought, well, there's a whole West Bank area, Coakley, and all that area out there that would be a new canal zone area. So that was just kind of an interesting conversation to have. But it would be interesting to see. So, what are your thoughts if we were to, for whatever reason, again, not to discuss whether we could have, should have, did or didn't, but if the canal zone had continued, where would the canal zone be, or what would it look like today in 2025? Thinking about the technology there and all that kind of stuff. It'd be an interesting conversation to have, right? And see what your thoughts are on that. Say, I'm working, so I can't stay. We'll be out of town for holidays, but wanted to wish. Oh, absolutely, Jill. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well. And enjoy your holidays and your work and whatever else you're doing. But thank you for reaching out and have a great weekend, Jill. Awesome. Ricky, you back? Still got that same frozen pose. So he's he's still, remember, he lives in the tech hub of the world, right next to Silicon Valley. So it is difficult to have connectivity over there in good old San Francisco.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, but your video's frozen. Now I don't know if these guys can hear you, but let's see. Lee Morton, Merry Christmas. We hope you have a great holiday season. Look forward to enjoying the Canal Zone reunion with all you Zonians. Yes, listen, most of the stuff that was out there from when they first announced it and tickets went on sale sold out quickly. So it looks like it is a gigantic crowd, and kudos to these guys. Well done for having Canal Zone reunion, Panama, Canal Zone reunion 2, whatever you want to call it. But they're doing a fantastic job, and they again keep adding more things to it. Remember, that reunion there is one that take some comfortable footwear, because it's a reunion where you go and do things. You're not just sitting around in a hotel, which in and of itself is fun to do. But this one, you're going to go see a lot of old neighborhoods. You're going to get on a train. You're going to get on a boat. You're going to get on a bus, on a Chiva. So be prepared to stay active, because it's going to be you're definitely going to be busy doing stuff there, but a lot of cool reminiscing, right? It's going to be different. Just be ready for that. It's certainly not, for a lot of people that haven't been down there since they left many, many years ago. It's certainly not the same Canal Zone, not by any stretch. But there's enough there that, if you've traveled overseas anywhere else, it's kind of nice to be somewhere where it is overseas, but it is familiar territory, right? Because you'll see stuff there that you certainly will recognize. I would say the probably the most, in my idea, and I've only gone back to Panama 2 times since I left in '89, so it's not like I'm up to speed and familiar with it. But I stay on a lot of social media, and there's plenty of Zonians and Panamanians that film and take pictures and stuff. But I would think that the most unchanged area of the Canal Zone, I would say, would probably be like El Prado, that area. I would say probably because it is so iconic in the way it was purposely designed and whatnot, that that would probably be the one for me. Sheila, how you doing? Good evening. Good to see you. Paul, good to see you. Merry Christmas from Panama. Yeah, right on. So, Paul, what is, in your opinion, what is the most of, more or less, like the residential areas and stuff, and I guess even the public spaces, but what is the most unchanged from Canal Zone days to now in Panama? Yeah, throw it in the chat there when you get a chance. I know we got that bit of a lag there, but yes, Merry Christmas to you as well, Sheila. We're at that season now. We're only a week away, right? I got to say, I like Panama the way it is today. Be nice if the zone, let's see here. Sorry, I put it up on the screen here. Be nice if the zone was still part of it, but all things changes the only constant. Amen to that, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same, or the more they stay the same, the more they change, whatever that saying is. But yeah, indeed, that's absolutely true. And it is Panama. The zone was a United States territory, so it was run and lived like the United States. It's now part of Panama. It's run and lived like Panama is. So, but you look at Panama in general and what that country has become, and I mean, just even the thought of having a metro and a subway and all that kind of stuff was probably not something we would have thought of 30, 40 years ago. And so that's pretty good. La Boca looks pretty good. Right on. Yeah, it does. Obviously, that one end of it is changing dramatically now with the new bridge going up, which is interesting. In fact, that I'll tell you what. While we're trying to get Ricky to do what he's doing, let me cue something up here. I got this video. I came across this video recently, and let me see where it is, because this has to do with the new bridge that's going up and where it's at. It's really, really impressive what they've done. It's absolutely impressive. Okay, Willie, I have no sound or voice. Okay, well, we're I would say, Ricky, if you can hear me or somewhere on, maybe if you're watching it, jump on your phone. You can at least do that, and that your camera and stuff will work there. You don't need the computer to do all that stuff. Then, I mean, we had Coach Bales on from Japan on his phone, walking around in his son's backyard at 10 o'clock in the morning on, in Japan. So the phone definitely works good. So give that a try. Let me look at something here. Here it is. Yeah, this is really cool. This bridge is it's the fourth bridge, they call it. We had Ralph Furlong on recently to talk a little bit about that, but it's the bridge has been it's about well, the bridge itself is not halfway done, but it's part bridge and part tunnel, right? Because you have the bridge going over the canal right in between the ports of Balboa and the Bridge of the Americas, the Thatcher Ferry Bridge. And but right underneath it, or next to it underneath, is a tunnel that's being dug. It's going under the canal and coming up, and they're going to run the metro through that thing. And what we found out is that Panama and the canal zone is let me flip that again. Chorrera and Arahan are now really considered suburbs of the big Panama City metropolis. And so a lot of people that work in the city live in this area and they commute. And of course, even with that other bridge that's out, closer to Gamboa in that area, it's still, the traffic is brutal. And so they've built this new bridge, and they have this metro, which is going to go all the way out to Chorrera. And it's going to cut that trip down from hour plus to less than 40 minutes to get into Panama City. So pretty impressive what they've done with that. You can now actually take the metro from Tocumen Airport and get yourself all the way into pretty darn close to Balboa. And eventually, of course, now you'll be able to connect onto another metro that'll get you all the way across under the canal and that way. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, I don't know what I think Ricky is. He's definitely got his down and out tonight, I think. Let's see here. Let me see what he's saying. He's got no sound and no voice. So, well, we're gonna see what we can do here for now. But I guess I'll just fly solo with this. Let's do this. Let me get our sponsor up here, because again, we definitely can't do this without the help of these guys. And Howler Monkey Sauce has been just top notch. They've stepped up and sponsored our show for 6 months now, and it is a great hot sauce anyway. I really like it, from just a personal standpoint, and now, of course, since they're sponsoring us, I really like it. But let's see what those guys are doing here. And with the ad, we did the first ad, which was Gamboa, and then we've been showing Mac, which was the second Howler Monkey that they're trialing. And Chamis should be coming out. He should be ready this weekend. You'll see him Friday. But let's go back, if you haven't seen yet. We've seen Mac a couple times. Let's go back and see then what if I can find him real quick. Where Mr. Is he here? Yeah, this is our original Howler Monkey, Gamboa. Check this guy out.
Howler Monkey Sauce sent me to the jungles of Panama in search of their new spokesperson, and let's see if we find them.
Hey, listen, you don't need to keep looking for a spokesperson. You found me. I love this Howler Monkey hot sauce.
Wow. Okay, and what's your name?
They call me Gamboa up here in these trees.
Roll camera and action.
This one, the Amarillo, is going to be amazing on chicken. Trust me.
Do you know a howler monkey who can describe the sweet heat of our original with authentic ají chombo peppers, or the fresh punch of verde where habanero warmth meets crisp bell pepper? How about the bold tang of Amarillo, yellow Scotch bonnets blended with mustard seeds? And of course, our hot, the same great flavor as original, with red habaneros for that fire. Our sauces are all natural, no preservatives, gluten-free, pure flavor and pure fire. Are you the next Howler Monkey spokesperson?
Okay, so we'll see who the next Howler Monkey spokesperson is. So that was Gamboa. That was our first one, and then we had Mac, who we've come to meet here in the last couple of weeks, and then of course our next spokesperson is right here, none other than our friend. Let me get him set up here. Our friend Ricky Royo is back in town, but let me get him all set up here real quick because he is back. Let me just get him all situated. He had to put in a new connection here, so bear with me, guys. There he is. I'm gonna, you know what, Rick? I'm not gonna do that for now. I'll just leave it as is for now. We'll fix it here in just a moment. But hey, welcome back on the show, Ricky. Can you hear us? No? ¿Me escucha? No, I guess not. Okay. Anyhow, let me do this. Let me go ahead and bring these guys on real quick here.
Can you guys hear me though?
Yes, we can. Ricky, can you hear us?
Good. Finally, yes.
Okay. Well, welcome, Ricky. But more importantly, Steve Tochterman, Jesus Romero, welcome to Happy Hour at the Balboa Yacht Club. Happy Friday and Merry Christmas to you guys.
Hello, gentlemen.
Same to you.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Good to see you guys again. A repeat customer. I like that. It means our service wasn't so bad after all. So, but no, it's interesting the timing that you guys have with everything going on now in the news, both current events and anniversary events, because both of them tie in quite nicely with what you guys have done and what Jesus you're continuing to do with these books you're writing. But just real quick, guys, to backtrack for a moment here, back in, and let me get the video here right. Let me just back earlier this year. Actually, I was going to say last year, but we're still in 2025. But we had these guys on talking about a book called Final Flight, Queen of Air. And as you can see it there, let me see if I can get these guys to move and get them out of the way here in just a moment. The screen is not cooperating with me for some reason. Let's go here. No, see what's going on. Sorry, guys. This is a night of technical difficulties. But anyhow, go ahead and Ricky, go ahead and introduce these guys and talk to them real quick while I get this whole situated here. But talking about the book
everybody,
and what we had before.
We started the show praising how good our tech has gotten, and tonight, things happen. Guys, this is with us tonight, like Willie said, two authors of the book, Final Flight, Queen of Air. Now, this is their second time on the show. I'd like to introduce you guys first to our very good and Zonian friend, Mr. Steve Tochterman, Balboa High School, class of 76. And he was a big part of this book as a co-author. And the author of this book tonight, we have Commander Jesus Daniel Romero, an adopted Zonian, who, wrote this book, but also, like Willie mentioned earlier, lived and served in the Panama Canal. Commander Jesus has 37-year military and intel services to the U.S. forces. Thank you very much for that. And Mr. Romero can also be seen on Fox News, Newsmax, Univision, just to name a few. So we really, really thank you for being with us tonight to go over these really important issues that we're all facing now on the news daily, but also tomorrow being Just Cause anniversary, there is a small, not a correlation, but similarities in what's happening then and what's happening now.
Yeah, and small is putting it lightly. I mean, this is, if you ask me, this is almost a mirror image. And you know what? We've done enough talking. Steve, starting with you here. Final Flight Queen of the Air. Give us your background on where you wrote this and stuff, and then we'll go ahead and start talking about Just Cause, and then segue into what's going on currently today in Jesus's book. But go ahead and give us your story first.
Okay, yeah, sure. Hey, thank you. Hey, Ricky, boy, I'm going to be in big trouble here if I stay with BHS 76. I actually
Ooh,
graduated in 75, so we got
75.
to
All
put that
right,
to
all right.
bed.
My bad, my bad. I should have asked, but I thought I had remember you
Well, it's not a
mentioned.
bad for a guess. I mean, you know, it wasn't bad. It was only off by a year.
Yeah, no worries. No, hey, so I started working with the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, in 1980. Worked with them 35, 36 years or so. And I was posted in Tampa, Florida, Belgium, Singapore, and Atlanta for 20 some years, and I finished out my career in Atlanta. And I was in the law enforcement assistance program. So basically, my job, and it was a very very small group of people, like 13 people across the country, and our primary mission was to support federal, state, and local law enforcement officers on aviation cases. So that's what we did, whether it was in the United States or outside the United States. And I spent a lot of time doing the international cases in the Western Hemisphere, all the way down, Central South America and stuff. So it's a lot of good people I worked with, a lot of different agencies, and so we ended up working, both Jesus and I, and geez, there was a cast of, well, there was a lot of people that worked on the investigation. We refer to the Aircraft Guarantee Corporation AGC case that the individuals got prosecuted in Texas in started in 2021, 2022, and so we worked on that case for almost 5 years. And a number of people got indicted and prosecuted, and some went to jail. And we're going to talk about one of them that fled the country, and I'll give you the update on that. But it was a great job. It was a lot of fun, a lot of hours. Our primary focus on that case was aviation, and so that's what I did. So I worked with those different agencies on the aviation pieces, the aircraft, speed and identifying aircraft and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, and in the end, you work a lot of cases, regardless of what agency you are in the United States. It doesn't matter if you're civil or federal. You work a lot of cases, and sometimes people don't get prosecuted or so. But we were very, very fortunate in this case. I think 8 or 9 people were on the indictment. A couple of them passed away, and for the most part, the major players were convicted. So it's a great day. A lot of agencies put together a lot of work involving drugs coming mostly out of Venezuela by
Mhm.
aircraft and into Central America. So we work with our partners in Central America also, and you got to be very cautious about who you're working with there, because you never know whether they're corrupt there or not. But it was a very successful case. So we spent, Jesus and I'll tell you, we spent more than a year on the book.
Yeah.
Um,
No, and we talked about the book back in April, and Jesus, Zonian, obviously we've had this discussion in the past here on the show that, a Zonian, initially through pride or whatever, was, hey, you had to be living in the zone, and your parents worked for the Panama Canal Company and whatnot, and everybody else was an outsider, and we were very protective of that. But over the years we've come to really understand that, I mean, heck, I'm not living in the zone if it wasn't for the Air Force and my dad being stationed down there. So you were stationed in Panama, you're a Zonian as well, but having been in the military down there. So give us your background and your story here, and then leading up to this conclusion, which is a very recent article here that kind of brings this thing full circle to the next story.
Yeah, my story is my father was stationed in Panama. He was in the Venezuelan Air Force, and he was part of the basically the School of Americas, or the Air Force component for Latin America. So my dad had been in Panama in the 50s, and I later joined the military and ended up going to Panama. And for whatever it's worth, my job was basically strategic intelligence. But it just so happened that the number one problem that was ongoing back at the time, back in '96, was still drug running from Colombia and Venezuela into Panama. And so I spent basically 3 years all the way up to until we handed the Panama Canal to the Panamanians, doing the same mission, still doing counter drugs. And I was kind of thrown into it and never stopped doing it. I loved the mission. You could get self satisfaction within a couple of hours of your work. If
Right.
you did a good job, you can get some of the results immediately, and you can kind of scratch that itch. So we had a great time in Panama. We had, we formed great relationships, and still have some friends in Panama, and have some friends that were Zonians. And it just so happens that Steve and I kind of find out that he was in Panama at the recently within the case with Deborah Lynn Mercer, and so we were in Texas and find out that he had been in Panama, and me too. And so we started talking about some of the people that we knew, and turns out that we know the same people.
Common mission.
And so I'll tell you something about that I think it drives the point about tonight's interview. While we're talking about the 20th year, or the anniversary of the Panama invasion,
Right.
and the underlying reasons why that was, obviously it had to do some with drug running, and it, oddly enough, still didn't go away then with a major invasion, but things got better for Panama. We're still dealing with um, the same problems, the same underpins that still kind of drives illicit economies and illicit activities
Sure.
today. And so, simply enough, it just kind of changed responsibilities from cartels to cartels. But basically, what Steve and I were doing, we were stopping the cocaine flow that was coming out of Venezuela by the Cartel de los Soles.
Right. Now let me ask you, going back to Panama and obviously pre-invasion, one of the issues was the fact that Noriega was dealing with the cartels in Medellin. And so after the invasion, how much of an impact did that have on them and Panama, because I mean that's a really big loss, I would imagine, for those guys.
Well, the drug flow didn't really change. In fact, if you remember in the mid 90s, you had this economy that was being run by the drug flow into Panama. And
Right.
so Panama became basically a laundromat for illicit activities. And so a lot of the infrastructure that was built in major maritime cays where we seized 12 metric tons of cocaine, that was a major and the largest maritime load in history then.
Right.
And then now we talk about loads that are 20 metric tons on a ship.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, and it's interesting because, one could argue then that when they look at Panama now and go, look at this incredible giant city, and you say, well, yeah, but a lot of it was financed by cocaine money, well, some people might say, well, what was wrong with that? Well, look what it did to our city, but, obviously long term, it's probably not good. And I would imagine that ultimately did hurt Panama, and force everything else to happen. But now let's talk about this case now and this OCCRP report that came out, which kind of brought that story back to, I wouldn't say full circle, but in some ways another conclusion, right?
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, definitely. This is the case involving a pilot and an aircraft broker out in California. His name is Lance Ricotta, and he's long term aviation guy out in California. A lot of people know him in Southern California and et cetera. And he ended up, he was an aircraft broker, and uh, he got convicted. Geez, 80s, early 90s, for falsifying documents with another, drug cartel guy by the name of Ed Nunez. But he later he was an aircraft broker, and so anybody can broker an aircraft in the United States, regardless if they've ever been convicted of anything or not. So Lance was, broker an aircraft, and lo and behold, this OCCRP, which is a really reputable, organization, and they do a lot of good reporting, not only on drug smuggling, but a lot of other investigative cases. They do a lot of investigative journalism, really good. They worked on this for about a year, I guess, give or take. But Lance Ricotta brokered a number of aircraft. Now he's not in the indictment that we're talking about in the case that led to Final Flight Queen of Air. However, uh, uh, amazingly, 11 of the aircraft that he owned or had a hand in, whether it was money or a handshake or paper, 11 of his aircraft ended up either burned on the ground in Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, and so his name was floated around a lot by a lot of different agencies, and so this OCCRP, decided to pick up and say, well, let's take a look at Lance Ricotta, and so that's it's a really good article about the number of aircraft that he brokered.
Well, let's
Most of
talk
them
about
went
that
to
real quick,
Mexico.
Steve, because that was in the crux of the book. This whole ability to literally have aircraft. I mean, you're talking $1 million aircraft change hands more than once in a day. In fact, so and this was happening in a town that didn't even have an airport. So give us that background to kind of put into context when we talk about brokering all these aircraft and what that meant.
Yeah, okay, exactly. So it, the AGC case was based upon the Aircraft Guarantee Corporation and Deverlin Mercer, and there's a company in Dallas, WFAA. They've done some really, really good reporting, and a lot of agencies, including FAA and military and HSI, DEA, ATF, a whole bunch of agencies, IRS, worked on that investigation. So they registered about 1,200 aircraft in Onalaska, Texas.
Yep.
Onalaska, Texas does not have an airport,
Right.
but they had about 1,200 aircraft registered, basically in that town. So the process to register an aircraft has been a problem for many, many years. And so here's the problem. To register an aircraft in the United States, it's two pieces of paper. It's a bill of sale, it's a registration application form, and $5. That's what it costs to register an aircraft, regardless of the size, if it's a single engine or
Now, does the bill of sale need to be notarized or anything?
None of them. None of them has to be notarized, and most of the paperwork is sent through the mail, so nobody sees anybody. So if you want to register your car, typically you go to a DMV.
Right.
You may have to present a driver's license or some ID or show you live at a certain address through a utility bill or something like that. If you want to register a trailer, it's the same way. If you want to buy a house, you go before. Usually, you got some attorneys and things like that, and you get notarized, and you got to show money and etc. But in the aviation business in the United States, it's $5 and two pieces of paper through the mail. So if you wonder, oh my goodness, could there possibly be fraud involved? I mean,
right. You're almost
there are
encouraging it
cases,
at that point.
Exactly. There's cases where people just basically stole aircraft from other people by falsifying their signature on the bill of sale, and then they
Right.
registered it themselves and said, "That's my plane," and they sent in the $5.
And by the time they figure it out, that plane's long gone. It flew away.
Exactly. So getting back to the AGC case with the 1,200 aircraft, at $5, two pieces of paper, most of the aircraft that they registered were in a trust. Now, it's illegal to register an aircraft in the United States if you're a foreign citizen. You cannot register an aircraft in your name as a foreign citizen, but there's workarounds. So you can register it in a trust. And the trust says, Jose Gonzalez in Mexico is, the trustor of the aircraft, which is basically owner. And they send in some trust documents and et cetera. No IDs, no nothing to the FAA. And then AGC.
But the trust is in the
registers-
United States, so it satisfies the regulations of registering it in the United States.
Exactly. Exactly. So even though they're a foreign citizen, they are the owner of the aircraft, but they're not the registered owner of the aircraft. So
They're the owner of the
flying-
trust. They don't own the aircraft. The trust owns the aircraft.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's very little of this, know your customer kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And with the FAA, there's no vetting of the information that's provided. So if I sell my plane to you, no one calls you from the FAA and say, "Hey, Will, did you sell your plane to Steve?"
Right.
Nobody calls you. Nobody calls me to say, "Hey, Steve, did you buy a plane from Will?" And nothing has to be certified or notarized on paperwork that's sent to the FAA. And so those documents get sent.
So what you're saying is that it's more challenging to buy a case of beer than it is to sell an aircraft.
Exactly. There's no ID required.
Makes sense.
No ID. We've had I think a 6-year-old registered an aircraft. We had a guy in prison in Massachusetts. He sent in the paperwork, got it registered to him, get the address of the prison in Massachusetts. We've had drug traffickers, convicted drug traffickers register aircraft in the AGC case. The guy was online on Google as a convicted drug trafficker in Mexico, and AGC just, oh yeah, well, we looked at the guy, he was okay. Well, they registered a plane to him, they sold a plane to that guy, and next thing you know, that thing ends up on, burning in Guatemala after it ran about, 1,200 kilos of cocaine.
And it's amazing that you think, you just general thought would be it's an airplane. There's got to be a little bit more, vigilance and eyes on it. I saw something totally unrelated, but recently, some airline, they were notified by an airport because they're going to do some construction. They go, "Hey, you got to move your 737." They're like, "What's 737?" It'd been there for 7 years. They'd forgotten about it, and it fell through the cracks in re-registering whatever. And you got a whole Boeing aircraft here that nobody even knew they owned. And so it's amazing that happens in 2025 in the, information age. But, so this of course led to, finding out what's going on with these aircraft and how, like you guys mentioned in the book, at one point an aircraft lands and before it takes off again, it's already re-registered. There's a new number painted on the side of it. And it's a whole different ownership aircraft and followed on a different radar, etc. So, that's gone on. You guys obviously, got a big case here, and then it's, as we see in the news here, it's come to a conclusion. So now we're going to look and see, then fast forward to where we're at now, right? Because we've got a new threat, a new avenue that's, and maybe not new for you guys, but certainly new for us in the news, because everything was the aircraft. And am I the only one getting that bad static feedback, or is anyone else hearing that?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay. It might be mine.
Yeah. Well, Will, if I could just add one more thing. So, the usual, the usual crooks, involved in stealing cars and motorcycles and things like that, they'll try to change, the license plate number, or they'll put a fake one on there, kind of thing like that. So that's pretty standard. But the cartels and the crooks involved in aircraft, they pretty much do the same thing. They just change the tail number, and they put whatever tail number they want on there, and off they go. They also put tail numbers that exist, and that's what some of the scheme is. That Jesus and I worked a number of cases on that. Is Will owns a plane November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I'm going to jump out, but keep chatting.
Yeah. And so the cartel they would just put on November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so people would say, "Oh shoot, there's Will's plane." And well, wait a minute, what's Will's plane doing operating in Guatemala and Venezuela? Well, and then they call Will, and well, I don't know what you're talking about. And so it's the same thing with vehicles. They just dummy up, and they even change the paint scheme on the aircraft, stuff like that, to try to fool us. But it's just standard crook kind of regular stuff. But they do get kind of smart sometimes. But we just gotta I mean, a lot of people, a lot of people worked
A
on
lot of
these
people
cases.
behind trying to find this. I got a question for you guys. Was there a single case in the book that to you captured the true scale of this aviation trafficking network?
Could you say again?
Was there a single case in the book that you guys wrote that to you captures the true scale of this aviation trafficking network? Like what made you guys say this is important enough for us to write about?
Oh, Jesus and I, we may disagree on the single one, but we're both going to agree on the case of the Saberliner that flipped over and ran down the the dirt strip. Oh, geez, one fight after that, and etc. That was a great case. That was a good
So this
case.
is in Venezuela, and the plane was taking off.
Yeah, so no, it's a Saberliner. It's a small jet, maybe about 8 seat aircraft, really fast. Those jets, and so the plane flew from Mexico down into Venezuela. It loaded, I think, what 1,200 to 1,500 kilos of cocaine on that flight. They take all the seats out and etc. They load it in a remote area in Venezuela, and then it takes off in the middle of the night, and they fly dark. When I say they fly dark, they turn all their equipment off and stuff, so they think they can't get tracked and stuff like that. But I mean, the U.S. government's got some good equipment and stuff, and so they're looking as best we can. But it's a wide open ocean there between coming out of Venezuela and the Caribbean. But so, we saw the track, and the aircraft came in to land in a remote area. It's a dirt strip. They just built a dirt strip in the middle of nowhere, Guatemala. This one happened to be along the coast. I think it was the east coast of Guatemala. And these guys were coming in. The pilot was a 20, 30-year aviation pilot, very experienced, and a co-pilot who was a rookie. He never even flown in a Saberliner before. And his checklist, checklist for the co-pilot, it was handwritten. They did a handwritten checklist, for this guy because he'd never flown the Saberliner. And so they're coming into this dirt strip, and they ran out of fuel before they landed, and uh, they eventually landed, but they basically crash landed. That plane came flat down because it was like a rock coming down. It came flat down. It hit, flipped over, cartwheeled down the runway. Amazingly, the crew survived, but there was a firefight. The military was in the area, and the cartel showed up, and there was this big firefight for about an hour after that. And the pilot was named this guy Amaya, and he's well known. He's still in jail in Guatemala, but that was a really big case. A lot of people were looking at that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then now we've transitioned then over to getting now into the water version of things, right? And we keep hearing these stories, and again, we're not trying to get into anything political here, but Jesus, shed some light on what's going on, on the water end of things. And interestingly enough, another book coming out, which again, I'm not kidding you guys, timing could not be better for this. But Jesus has a book that's coming out. Fingers crossed, it'll be out right before Christmas. It's called Lethal Silence: The Hidden World of Narco Submarines. Jesus, give us some background on this and how it ties into what's going on in the news right now. And there is, for what it's worth, there's something with your mic. I kind of turned it down a little bit because I think that's where the static is coming from, because I muted earlier and it stopped, for what it's worth. But
I can hear the static the entire time right here.
Yep.
So anyway.
But you sound good now, though. That's good.
The problem is that narco traffickers need to push that dope out of Colombia, and they'll do it in any way, which way they can. So most of the time, and the majority of the volume of cocaine comes out via high speed boats, semi-submersibles, narco submarines, any way and they can get large amount of volume out, they'll try to do that. And so these speedboats normally carry anywhere between 1,200 kilos to 2,500. Low profile vessels can carry anywhere between 1,200 to 3 tons. And some of the semi submersibles can carry 3 to 7 metric tons of cocaine. So, what we're watching today is what I have been watching for the past 20 years. And what
Okay.
the reality of the truth of what's happening is that we're basically not keeping up in interdiction with high volume cocaine trafficking from Colombia through Ecuador and Venezuela. So when you hear people, they'll say, well, only it's a small percentage of cocaine that it's coming out of Venezuela. But what you don't hear those experts, because they're self-appointed experts, they'll never tell you what that amount is. They'll never tell you what that 9% is. Well, I can tell you, it's a lot. And
Right.
it's enough to say that there is hundreds and thousands of those maritime events that you're watching on TV or that you're watching on social media that gets reported by the Department of Defense. So we were watching that all the time. Now, if you are out there with all of the resources you have with the U.S. Coast Guard under Title 10 and Title 14, you can hit some of those loads, but you're never going to be able to hit all of the loads, and that
Right.
is what the problem and crux is. So you have a high cultivation percentage coming up every single year after the Colombian peace deal that was signed in 14 through 16. The coca production never stayed below or never went down. In fact, it more than tripled in the last couple of years since the signing of the peace accords between the FARC and the Colombian government. So what they found out is that taking the dope out of countries like Venezuela and Ecuador, it's the easiest way so that you don't bring the attention of the US government purely into Colombia. That's pretty sneaky. But we're living the results of those bad policies today. And so when you cannot even keep up, this is the problem that you have. And
Right.
so when you start looking at, and people say, well, that's the same way it's been through the Pablo Escobar days. We're not even close to the Pablo Escobar days. We're way beyond that. And as a matter of fact, we cannot even keep up. The US government says that they stopped and they disrupted 420 metric tons of cocaine last year bound to the US. Well, we didn't even scratch the transnational criminal organizations. We didn't even put enough people in jail. This is a fact. We put away anywhere between 5 to 600 narco lancheros every year. And these people will go and serve time in the US. And you add 500 this year, 600 next year, 700 the year after that. And before you know it, you have a population of narco lancheros, about 10,000 in the US, serving
And
a
these are the
pretty
folks that are
big
getting on these
criminal sentence.
boats. These are the folks getting on these boats, taking them up to the U.S.
Yes. And so when you let them out, what's the first thing that they do when they come out of jail? They'll do it again.
Right. Yep.
And then they get caught one more time. And so this is the turning, it's basically become a turning around door
Sure.
for these people. So they just come out and they come back and they do it all over
It's a
again.
revolving door for them. Absolutely.
Well, so let me tell you what the bad deal really is. So you always hear about fentanyl, and you hear people talk about fentanyl, and then they'll say, well, that's not what's coming out of those boats. Well, here's what the truth is. So you remember that we had a big opioid crisis here in the US by about 14 through 16.
Right.
So basically, we had the largest addiction populace in the US, and it was heroin. Heroin was the number one problem in the US. It was not
Right.
opioids. Opioids obviously was becoming a problem because doctors were the ones prescribing it. And so there were pharmaceuticals involved and all of that stuff. So Congress did a great job. Congress kind of put the kibosh on that. And what happened was, it's that caused fentanyl to start coming from China. And then it started coming through the Mexican cartels. Well, the problem with fentanyl is that it was killing people. So
Right.
one small little dosage would kill you. So the narcos figured out, well, we can't really live by killing our clients.
Yeah, it's
And
not going to work.
so we got to find a way so that the fentanyl can be taken without killing. And they found out that mixing it with cocaine, what's kind of like reduced the chances of you dying. It was still lethal, but it was less lethal than just giving you pure fentanyl.
Sure.
So what you're here right now is when you hear about people saying, well, there's hundreds of thousands of Americans dying of fentanyl, well, the truth is that it's fentanyl mixed with cocaine.
Right.
So now the whole thing about cocaine increase makes sense. So you need more cocaine so you can mix it with smaller dosages of fentanyl.
In order to move your fentanyl, you got to have more cocaine to mix it with.
And that is what most people can get to seem to think about how this whole thing affects American citizens. And so
Right.
we don't have enough resources to interdict and board, search and seize. We just don't
Right.
have enough for that.
Right.
But when you actually look at the underlying reasons why Venezuela is particularly being the subject of this issue is because they taken cocaine as a matter of conducting basically an asymmetric warfare against the U.S. based on an ideology. And that is what the problem that we're having today. So when you look at is the Cartel de los Soles the same thing as the Sinaloan cartel or the Cartel de Jalisco? They're not. They're not even remotely close because the Cartel de los Soles has become the head of a narco state. There's not another narco state anywhere in the world.
Right.
There are no narco states in Mexico, so Mexico is still a country that still kind of has some rules and some
Sure.
facade of a democracy.
They have challenges enforcing their laws, but they are still a sovereign country with laws.
In a way.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and so when you
On paper.
when you look at the U.S. strategy that's kind of like risen to priority levels now, basically what we're saying is this: if we continue allowing this drug shipments from making it into the U.S., before you know it, we're going to have a crack type of problem in the U.S. like we had in the 90s.
Right.
And so rather than living through that, I think that the policy it's congruent with the threat. So you have a country that it's led by a whole bunch of criminals that took over somebody else's elections and they just basically took Venezuela as theirs. So now you were hidden, you've been shielded from law enforcement and from international scrutiny by having a narco state. And that is the big difference that we're having and we're seeing in today's politics.
And so and this goes back, we hear about Maduro and all that, but this goes back to Chavez. I mean, this was an actual policy that he verbalized, wasn't it, that he was going to attack America with cocaine, right?
Yeah, so yeah, I wrote that in the book. So on the book, it says that the primary reason why we were seeing all of this increase of cocaine and that we were seeing all of the shipments coming from Venezuela, it's because Hugo Chavez said it that he was going to basically uh, bombard the U.S. with cocaine shipments, and
Right.
and there was a reason behind that. It was based on the ideology to keep the left, the socialism of the 21st century. When Chavez used all of the petroleum money, when he kind of broke the bank, he figured out that in order for him to pay for the socialism of the 21st century project, he needed money. The irony is, he needed George Washington back up so
Right.
that he could pay for it.
Sure.
And so when you look at the underlying conditions and reasons about how we were attacked asymmetrically by a third world country, it makes sense now that you see why the cocaine production went up through the roof.
Sure.
So that you're using it to mix fentanyl, you're using all of that money that you're making it back so that you can buy elections, like, for example, in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum would have never won the elections in Mexico had not been for cocaine money proceeds directly from the cocaine air bridge that it's on the book.
Right. Right. Well, and it's interesting you mentioned that. And Steve, you and I were talking the other day about this, and uh, that we talk about, this interdiction and how we're bombing these boats and whatnot. But you brought this up that, well, what about all the aircraft being shot down in Venezuela? And I asked you, well, wait, that doesn't make sense because Venezuela is behind pushing this. But talk about that quote unquote tax, to fly in and out of Venezuela, which is one of the ways they're raising money.
Yeah, that's a great question, Will. And so, Venezuela, for probably 10, maybe 15 years or so, uh, has been shooting down. They call it disabling. They disable aircraft. Okay, and for the most part, these are drug smuggling aircraft that are flying into Venezuela in the middle of the night, usually from the north, Mexico, or some from Peru and Bolivia and Brazil, etc., stuff like that. But so the aircraft fly into Venezuela, and they go to this remote area along the Colombian border on the northern part. It's called the Apure region, and so they land there in the middle of the night. They load, and and then off they go. Okay, so Venezuela has air traffic control. They have military air traffic, and they're looking for the it's a sovereign country, and so they're worried about getting invaded or military or other aircraft flying through their airspace, just like any other country. So Venezuela figured out, well, heck, we're gonna, they were always taking a cut. They were always taking a cut, percentage of the cocaine proceeds,
Sure.
usually by kilo. And so they decided, well, we're going to continue to take that cut, but now we're also going to charge everybody who wants to fly in, kind of like a landing fee. So if you fly from, say, Atlanta to San Francisco, you got to pay a landing fee when you land in San Francisco
Correct.
and any other. Okay, so the landing fee for a drug plane into Venezuela is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not cheap, and so
Cost of
basically,
doing business.
that's the cost of doing business. And so there's advanced knowledge that, say, on Tuesday night at between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, a plane is going to come in from the north along these coordinates, etc., into Venezuela, and it's going to go to the Puri region. And so Venezuela sees the aircraft. They can see it. They can see it. They know the plane's coming. They can see it on their radar. They can hear it. It's coming in. And so someone in Venezuela at a high level says, let it go. Let it go, and it flies right into the Puri region. Takes a couple hours, loads up, refuels, and then as it flies back out, somebody at a high level in the cartel in Venezuela tells air traffic, let it go. No problem. And the military aircraft, Venezuelan military aircraft, stay on the ground. Now, if you do not pay, which the crooks, they don't like to pay.
You're dealing with crooks, so it makes sense.
You're dealing with crooks. So the crooks have sent tons of aircraft in without paying the fee in advance. Those aircraft get disabled by the Venezuelan military. Shot down, disabled. They let them land, and they blow them up. They burn
Pay to
them.
play, man.
That's been going on for years. U.S. registered, Brazil, Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, Guyana, Honduras, you name it, the Dominican Republic, you name it. Their aircraft have been flying in there. Our aircraft been flying in there and getting disabled and shot down. And who knows what happens to most of the pilots, etc.
Right.
So when I hear people complain that there's a fishing boat flying through the Caribbean or the East Pac and it gets destroyed by the United States, I have yet to hear of anyone for 15 years from the U.S. government complain about, hey, we just had an aircraft that flew into Venezuela and it got blown up. And we got hundreds of pictures of the planes, U.S. registered, and the legitimate tail number is on there.
Right.
And nobody complains. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You guys figure it out, U.S. government. You guys figure it out. But we all know what's been going on, and that's just the way it operates.
No, absolutely. It's way too much money to not impact somebody and buy influence everywhere, including in our own country, and that's allegedly. But so let's go back and focus then on what's going on here. And briefly, Jesus, tell us about what you've got in store here, because this is Final Flight. Great book. It gives that insight of where this was, I guess, back in the I guess it would be Cartel 2.0, right? Because Cartel 1.0 was Escobar and those guys, and then after those guys, they shifted, like you said, where the production actually went up, and the whole big aircraft registration fiasco and stuff. And now we're into this next, I guess, Cartel version 3.0, which is this ocean going thing. What are these cartels like now? And back then, I guess it was easy to tell because it was basically the Medellin cartel was Pablo Escobar, and that was, I guess, the head, and everybody, kind of looked at that here. But who is the Cartel de los Soles that you mentioned several times, and tell us about what's coming up with those guys?
So, the Cartel de los Soles is basically Nicolás Maduro, Diosdado Cabello, and Vladimiro Padrinos Lopez. So, Nicolás Maduro is the Venezuelan former president. Diosdado Cabello is the former Minister of Justice, and Vladimiro Padrinos Lopez is the former Minister of Defense. And now I say former because they actually lost the elections the presidential elections that were held in July of 2024. Now, they just basically robbed the elections and they stayed in power. Well, the Cartel de los Soles was born back in the days of Chavez. And basically, it was born out of the same thing that I explained earlier about, they basically broke the bank from oil proceeds, and they now had to go and find another way to make money to kind of push forward their socialism of the 21st century.
Right.
Well, what they actually did is that they kind of went out and they established relationships with the Colombian FARC. And that's how they first started getting cocaine out of Colombia into Venezuela, and then from Venezuela to Central America and the Caribbean.
And FARC, for those of you that don't know, FARC is the Colombian rebels that were fighting in Colombia for many, many years, that had really kept that country and seemed like a perpetual civil war for seems like for 15, 20 years or so. And that's who FARC is. And they obviously turned from that to then, drug trafficking became a very, very big, tool for them.
So basically, you still have the FARC in Colombia. You have other organizations as well. But you're trying to build yourself up to that. So in 2020, there was an indictment made in the U.S. where they actually identified Nicolás Maduro, Diosdado Cabello, and Vladimiro Padrinos Lopez as the main culprits of the Cartel de los Soles and what they were doing. But in doing that, there were two generals that were also designated under that same indictment. Well, those two generals were eventually arrested, extradited to the U.S., and they actually went through their court case, and they actually pleaded guilty. And they pleaded guilty to narco trafficking as major figures for the Cartel de los Soles. So when you hear people say, well, the Cartel de los Soles doesn't exist, and we haven't seen the proof and the evidence, well, you have two big army generals that are in jail serving a 20-year sentence for being members of the Cartel de los Soles, who were doing the coordination to pump the dope from Colombia to Venezuela to be flown into Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So basically, from this relationship, then also it kind of went over into the ELN. So in Colombia, the FARC and the ELN are now fighting over, basically control of the cocaine flow from Colombia into Venezuela. How do we know that? Because Jesus Santrich and Ivan Marquez, who were the top negotiators for the FARC, who were negotiating the peace accords out of La Habana, they eventually made it into Venezuela under the auspices of Nicolás Maduro. So there's plenty and ample evidence to show how the Cartel de los Soles has grown over the years about pumping that cocaine coming out of Colombia. So when you hear people say, well, it's only a small amount of cocaine that it's coming out of Venezuela. Well, make sure they tell you what the tonnage is,
Right.
because otherwise they're telling you a lie, and mostly it's political, and mostly it's charged about emotions and things like that, and you're never going to hear only but real people that have been on the field about to tell you facts and figures. Let me give you a
Sure.
figure, for example. Between 2017 and 2022, the Cartel de los Soles was able to pump 120 metric tons of cocaine by air from Venezuela destined to the US through Central America and the Caribbean. That's at a whopping $3 billion a year. And that was just on air. Now, meanwhile, you still have the maritime flow coming out of Colombia, coming out of Ecuador, coming out of Venezuela. And the Venezuelan cocaine was coming to Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. Now, if you know anything about violence in Puerto Rico, it's mainly caused by Colombian cocaine, by taken through Venezuela. And then you have a failed state called Haiti, and it failed because of cocaine that was coming out of Colombia through Venezuela. So we've seen this movie many, many times, whether it's air or maritime. If you put enough pressure into one of these transshipment means, you're going to get an effect. You may be able to stop it, you may be able to disrupt it, but eventually it's going to pick up steam into some other areas, and you're going
Sure.
to see that flow change. Um, you know, where it's being originated and where it's being transited, but mainly still through the U.S. And I think that that's the problem with the American people. I don't think that we're well informed. I think that there is a huge amount of ignorance, but I don't fault the American people because they're hoping that we're doing our job, that the government is doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
But basically, what's happened in the last 30 years is, I'll tell you up front what the problem has been, having worked in this problem for 37 years. It's that the US government gave up. The US government was like, oh man, it's just a drug war. Nobody cares. Well, somebody cares because you have American citizens dying.
Correct.
So
Correct.
when this stuff has started kind of drawing down, you still have the narrative that we're in a war against drugs, but the US Navy pulled out all of its ships.
Right.
And they said, "Hey, I'm sorry, we can't do it anymore because we don't have the ships, we don't have the money, and we got to put all of our efforts and resources into the war on terrorism."
Correct.
So
Correct.
9/11 exacerbated the problem, and it
Sure.
basically gave
Create an
them a free
opportunity.
range.
Now let me ask you, and it kind of leads into what we're looking at there is the three books here, because there's a trilogy of books that are coming out now, that are really intricate stories. And again, guys, looking at the background of these guys and what they know and what they've seen and investigated, this is I mean, just fantastic information if you want to really learn what the story is here. But one of the things that I think probably isn't talked about a lot, that really is again exacerbating this even more, is there's a term out there now, transnational gangs, right? And we use that term a lot, but I think people don't understand that. You're looking at Cartel de los Soles, and they're in that Venezuela area. They're run by Maduro and his gang of folks. You have what was the cartel you just mentioned that's in well, of course, FARC, and then the other one in Colombia is what?
ELN.
ELN, right? And then you have cartels in Mexico that are huge cartels as well. And I think this is also making things more difficult, is the fact that they're working together and they're coordinating, so that they're sharing information. They each have their mechanisms and ways of doing it. So how is that impacting this whole thing, and either making it more difficult or making it obviously more profitable for those folks?
Well, so here's what really should make your hair stand up. So when you hear that there is nexuses and relationships between the Cartel de los Soles and terrorist organizations, most people are kind of saying, that's not true. This is just one political narrative that it's coming out of this. But here's how it works. This had been going on for a while, but it made it even stronger. When we kind of disrupted this flow by plane coming out of Venezuela destined to the US through Central America and the Caribbean, when we actually dismantled this organization, here's what happened. That flow, that 120 metric tons, had to look for a way to find another market. So you
Right.
still have the same amount of cocaine that is being produced, but you have to find another market for it. Well, that market is Europe. And here's what they did: they still use planes to fly the cocaine, mainly from Colombia, being produced by the Colombians through the ELN and the FARC. But now they were flying the cocaine from Venezuela to Suriname and Guyana and over to Africa. And so people
Mm,
go, that is impossible. Well, there's several good cases that have resulted in interdictions in Ghana and Guinea-Bissau.
sure.
The same jets, like Lance Ricotta's type jets, now were being flown into Africa. And now here's where it gets really interesting. And this is where it should kind of really concern every American citizen. That cocaine was now being pushed by and secured by Boko Haram and ISIS.
Hmm.
Boko Haram and ISIS were the ones that were providing the security escort for the cocaine shipments coming out of Venezuela destined to Europe through Africa.
Wow. That's huge.
That's majorly significant.
Yes,
Now, out of
indeed.
that, we know that they were in cahoots with Hamas and Hezbollah. And that's why people talk about Hamas and Hezbollah being in Venezuela, because they were actually going back and forth about other types of relationship, weapons, arms that was being paid by cocaine proceeds.
Right. And which in turn helps to continue to destabilize areas in this region as well. When you're talking about bringing in that amount of people and the kind of people that you're bringing in, and unfortunately, going back to what we saw, previously with the open borders and everything, and the concern of what was coming through here, and how many of those people were indeed coming through. So
So,
now,
so listen, let me tell you one more piece of information, which I think it's you're going to find astounding. So last year, when we were working on the book, I got an invitation to go testify in Congress. I was going to testify in Congress on a committee that was going to talk about the air threat against the U.S. And so I think that the testimony was in late April or early May.
okay,
So I had been invited by the Senate Judiciary Committee to testify in January, and then the actual testimony was going to be in April or May. Did you know that I was actually prevented from providing my testimony? I was disinvited
wow,
because of obviously the nature of the discussion was going to be the Deborah Lynn Mercer case, which directly had a relationship with the Cartel de los Soles. They
right.
did not they did not want to have me provide the testimony. In turn, they asked somebody else who wasn't involved in the investigation at all.
Right. They couldn't really provide anything that would compel anybody to take any action. Wow. That's amazing. So now we're looking at three books on the screen here: Shadows of the Cartel de los Soles, Lethal Silence, which is the one we're looking at that's getting ready to come out here, and then Tren de Aragua. We've heard a lot about Tren de Aragua, right, in the news, and certainly with the elections and everything else there. But again, notwithstanding the politics of it, give us a background of what Tren de Aragua is, who they are, and how they've become so prominent an organization.
So Chavez knew early on that he was going to need someone that he could trust, that he could kind of give those special need requirements
Right.
to high level officers that would be, basically following what he was ordering him to do. And that got him into cocaine trafficking, armed trafficking, and actually assassinations, hits, murders, all kinds of stuff. That's where the Cartel de los Soles comes in, because when you're a flag level officer, you wear in your epaulette, you wear suns instead of stars like in the US. So that's the Cartel de los Soles.
Oh, very
All right.
interesting. So there's a lot of
So
symbolism there.
now he gets a military institutions. He brings in the intelligence apparatus, and now he's doing all of his illicit and illegal activities by using Venezuela's military. All right, so the other side, he knew that he just couldn't count on the military to do this. So they devised a very sneaky way of using basically people that were in jail to go out and do the same thing so that you would have two sides that they didn't trust each other, but
Right.
you could kind of make him do whatever they wanted. So now you have the Tren de Aragua, which was born out of Tocoron, which was one of the Venezuelan prisons. And Chavez used one of his closest colleagues that she was an expert in dealing with the criminals. And then it came out to be the Tren de Aragua. Now, why is this important? I'll put it in one single case so that you understand. About 2, 3 years ago, the Tren de Aragua, with members of the Cartel de los Soles, they traveled all the way to Chile to conduct a hit and an assassination against a Venezuelan opposition member who was a Navy officer, who had been a Navy officer, who had been outspoken of the Venezuelan regime. So much so that they actually had a hit on him in Chile. This was right out of a movie. So
Right.
they killed him, they put him in a hole, and then they poured concrete on him. And then finally all of this stuff came out. This is what's happening in Venezuela. This is what's happening to the Cartel de los Soles. So when you hear in today's environment, when you hear about the damage that the Tren de Aragua has done, it's exported into the US. So you
Right.
have a whole bunch of states. So this is where it gets really bad. You drove all of this stuff to really drive out the Tren de Aragua out of the US. They were in Florida, in New York, in Colorado, Texas, California. I mean, basically, they were everywhere in the US. And this is the result of what we're living. This is the last thing.
Got you. I got a question, but at one point I thought this question was going to be huge, but you've experienced so much. What surprised you the most doing this research for this book? I mean, your stories sound great, and I'm sure there's got to be one in there that really surprised you and said, you know what, this has got to be why I'm writing this book.
Well, I think that what surprised me the most is that this is actually a ground level truth. While we were kind of having some few levels of success, right? We finally figured out how to kind of stop some of the flow. You know, we were driving the Guatemalan military out into the places where the planes were landing. What I did find was that the U.S. government, and I'm talking about the national level government, was really not interested, and in so much so is that they were not really helping. So when we would ask for water and food and MREs and sat phones and paying the sat phone cards, all of that became real slow. I mean, it came in lost in the bureaucracy. And let me tell you, I'll be quite honest. I had shared this with Steve while we were conducting the investigation. I felt alone in Guatemala doing all of this work. I didn't get a whole lot of help from the U.S. government. And I thought that we had lost the war, even though we won and we stopped the cocaine flow by planes into Guatemala, which was basically going to go into the U.S. I felt that we had lost it. We did not have enough resources. The U.S. government was definitely not committed. And I thought it was after 37 years, I told Steve, I'm walking out the front door. It's not that I just don't want to, it's just that I don't have the resources.
I mean, you can almost
That
look at
was-
that almost like a Vietnam in a way. You know?
I can feel their pain.
So that would be the biggest surprise, at least for me. I thought it would be more like, you know, Al Qaeda or something involved, but yeah, that we threw in the towel and basically gave up on that war, and now we are where we are.
Force us to have to fight it again and take different measures, you know. And now, Steve, you know, going back to the initial story and again these air corridors, you know, where are we at now when it comes to the the whole registration fiasco, and has that slowed down at all, or is that still a problem with air and stuff? And where's that at now?
Okay, so um, it has changed. It has changed actually by the cartels, not by the U.S. government. So the registration process for aircraft in the United States remains the same.
Of course,
It
of
hasn't
course,
changed one bit.
unbelievable.
So now there are fewer aircraft being exported or sent to Mexico for drug trafficking purposes, and and I truly believe this, and in part is that it wasn't the book, it was the investigation and the prosecution, and people got convicted. So basically, in the indictment, which is available online. If you can't find it, send me an email. I'll be able to happy to send it to anybody. Is it three or four of the largest aircraft brokers? Now, there's one, he was not charged that, but he's charged another one. The four of the five largest aircraft brokers involved in these flights and sending aircraft, they're in the indictment.
Okay.
So the U.S. Attorney's Office did a fantastic job. So did the other agencies, and so that is in part of why a lot of the aircraft are not going there. So every once in a while, Jesus and I, we're still watching aircraft movements and things like that. But I can tell you, the FAA registration process is the same, but it was the investigation, but more so the prosecution. And then we'll talk a little bit about an indictment of this other guy and his extradition. But so it was those things, but people got convicted and sent to jail, and basically we shut down the air bridge for. It's been going on now about almost 3 years. Now, again, that doesn't mean to say there are not a couple flights here and there, but I think there was 1 year, and Jesus knows the exact number. There was 1 year, maybe it was 2020 or 2021. I think there was like 200 flights in a year. That's down to maybe, 15 or 20 a year now.
Right.
We were getting bombarded.
Exit to see if it's me. All right, I'm gonna exit and come back.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like the airplanes are used to bring the stuff from Venezuela, from South America, up to Mexico, but not into the U.S.
Correct. Yeah. So the aircraft,
Haiti or Santo Domingo, etc.
Yes, sir. That's right, Ricky. You've nailed it. So the aircraft would fly from Venezuela during the investigation, and fly from Venezuela into Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, or Mexico. The aircraft would land in remote airstrips. They'd offload the cocaine. The cocaine would go to the cartel and would be taken up into Mexico by boat or by road, and then they would just burn the aircraft on the strip there, and they attempt to destroy the aircraft and identification, but we were identifying the aircraft. So all the cocaine, Venezuela into Central America, into Mexico, where it's all cartel run, and then that's where it gets into Mexico, destined for the U.S. And it typically comes across. There were some small flights in the U.S. from Mexico, but it's basically land bridge, and it's coming over land bridge and containers and things like that. If I could just say one thing, Ricky, you asked a great question to Romero. Is basically it was like, what do you think was one of the reasons why we wrote the book? And we wrote the book, and the primary reason we wrote the book is, we're around 70 some years of service in the government, military, and civilian. Uh, we saw many years of cases where we could not get a prosecution, working with our federal partners, DEA, HSI, and et cetera. So a lot of cases were not made, in part because it's outside the country and it's very, very difficult. In this case, this was a success. We worked with 12 to 15 different federal agencies in the United States. We worked with 6 different countries: Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, Colombia. These people came to the United States and testified in a U.S. courtroom in Sherman, Texas. People from Colombia, military from Colombia, police officers from Honduras, prosecutors from Guatemala. This was a team from those countries and the United States that was put together. It was masterful. I'd never seen anything of my 30 some years in the federal government putting together. This was a success. All these people and agencies came together, and it was impressive as heck. And this is a story that needs to be told. That sometimes, and I say this 100 times, sometimes the government gets it right, and by God, in this case, we did.
Sometimes the good guys win.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment about some people are maybe sitting around going, "Well, what's the connection to Panama? Why are you guys talking about this on the Canal Zone thing?"
No, there's a lot. Let's talk about that. So, guys, Just Cause. I'm gonna give you guys what happened during Just Cause. Like,
he was going to make a
caused
point,
Just
Ricky, but
Cause?
okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. Okay, so Jesus touched on it. Tren de Aragua and the Cartel de Soles and the Venezuelans. How did most of them get to the United States? They walked through the Darien jungle, wandered up in the United States. That's how they got here. That's one connection to Panama. What's another connection? Money. Where is the banking? Venezuela has to survive on U.S. dollars. They're not surviving on dinars from the Far East and whatever the Brazilian currency. They want U.S. dollars. There's banking in Panama. Jesus and we watch flights, and again, we're talking small aircraft. We're not talking about Copa and those other flights. We see flights Colombia to Venezuela on the ground 30 minutes to Panama. They're in Panama for 2 or 3 days. They go back to Venezuela for 30, 45 minutes. Then they go to Colombia, or regular flights Venezuela to Albrook. Albrook to Venezuela, back to Venezuela.
We stopped Martinelli's jet in Guatemala.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that was you guys.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it has to feed it, and it's so amazing that everything somehow goes back to Panama when it comes to the true nature and the importance of the transit point that is and always has been Panama. I mean, even for 500 years, and even now, it becomes that to get it now up into Central America, into Mexico, and then over into the United States and everywhere else. Now, let me ask you, talking about these books, because we definitely want to promote these books. And guys, that first book, Final Flight, you can still get that. You can see it. There's a thing scrolling on the bottom there. You can get an autographed copy with free shipping right now if you go to the website there, finalflightqueenofair.com. So, Steve, go over that book. Give us a kind of a synopsis of the book so that people know and make sure they get it ordered before the holidays. And then we'll switch over to you, Jesus, to talk about the 3 new books that are coming out. So, Steve, give us a background on that Final Flight again.
Yeah, okay. So the background on the Final Flight Queen of Air book has to do with the prosecution in Eastern District of Texas, in Sherman, Texas. The U.S. Attorney's Office there took the case. It's the result, again, of almost 5 years of work by the military, the FAA, DEA, Homeland Security, IRS, Department of Commerce, Houston PD, a bunch of local agencies, again, military, and the other governments, Mexico and et cetera. So working on cases, we worked, Jesus and I and multiple agencies worked hundreds of aircraft cases for almost 5 years, hundreds of aircraft cases. And so no U.S. Attorney's Office is going to take a case with hundreds of aircraft cases, especially most of them, what they've landed and burned, and trying to identify them and et cetera like that because of difficulties and, validating, who was behind it and all that other stuff. Sure. So the U.S. Attorney's Office took the case after understanding that it wasn't only us within the federal agencies here in the United States, but Guatemala had become extremely corrupt for years prior to Jesus getting to Guatemala. They may have had, I don't know, 10, 20 flights a year. When after Jesus got there, I mean, for whatever reason, the cartels switched. Well, hey, we're gonna send a lot to Guatemala and Belize. The largest air interdiction was in Belize. It was 2,500 kilos of cocaine. That's unfreaking believable on a Gulfstream jet that landed on the sand. So the story is about the good guys. We got it right. We did something right, and it's appreciative of all the agencies and the other countries that worked on this. And thankfully, the air bridge has been just about shut down into that Central America, and
Sure.
that's a beautiful piece to see when we talk about narcotics and
And I
saving
remember, I
lives.
remember when you guys were on previously. We had that one map image, and it showed all those red lines, and it was a hard left that would go up along that coast of, or the border of Colombia and Venezuela, staying out of Colombia so you don't get shot down. And once they hit the water in the Caribbean, they made a hard left and went straight across over to Panama and Mexico and Guatemala, obviously, and all that. And so amazing that now that has come to a stop, but as far as the cartels are concerned, the show must go on. So they said, well, let's put that shit on the boats now and make them submersible and stuff. And this is where certainly Jesus, with your naval background and stuff, it plays a big role in this. But let's talk about those books then. The three books that you have here coming up. The first one again is Shadows of. Well, the first one is Lethal Silence, correct?
Yeah. So listen, while I was trying to conceptualize the whole story about the book, the first book, Final Flight, I wanted to tell a story. I was trying to deal with some of my inner demons as I retired, and I was trying to conceptualize how I wanted to present this book. And so my wife was the one that said, why don't you just tell the story of what happened? And that way you get it out of your system and people will know what you guys did. That it's worth telling that story.
Sure.
And just like Steve said, we wanted to make sure that the people had a chance to read and to understand what the government does well and what it doesn't do so good.
Right.
And so, the book, I thought that the book was very well written and it was a great story. And I swore up and down, Steve knows.
We lost him.
But then it dawned on me with everything that was going on right now, right? What's going on with the contemporary politics about the drug problem. And so when people are saying that the Cartel de los Soles doesn't exist, and this is a narrative that is being carried on, and there are people that actually believe it, I thought, there is no way I'm just going to sit still here. And rather than become a part of the political problem, I'm going to focus my time and effort into actually writing a story that, in fact, matches the story of Final Flight. And so the same thing can be said about Lethal Silence, about the narco submarines. We went from a few narco submarines per year to dozens and dozens per year. And this is a major problem. I actually make the case that these narco submarines should be made illegal, and they should be made labeled or designated terrorist platforms. They're already illegal to make. They're illegal to be riding on. But I think that we need to make it a little bit more harder on the narco traffickers and the narco terrorists. That if you get caught on one of them, you're going to get a life sentence. And maybe we'll start having some sort of behavior corrections. And so it's the same way with the Tren de Aragua. So if you actually look at what the Tren de Aragua did and what the narco submarines did and the Cartel de los Soles, and then you see the book Final Flight, there's an underlying problem. there's a common denominator. All of these cartels have now weaponized what used to be a little bit of cocaine, a little bit of marijuana, into major, massive problems into the U.S. society. So when I make the case in the books that this is an asymmetric warfare being waged against the U.S., well, it is. You know, when you consider how much cocaine is being transported in these vessels, you're talking about the equivalent of giving bullets and ammo and weapons to kids in the U.S.
Correct.
so that they can shoot themselves.
Yep. Absolutely.
Like
100%.
the opiate war of China.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Back in the day.
It is, and again, that's why earlier I asked about the whole Hugo Chavez involvement, because you know this didn't just organically become something that Venezuela said, hey, look at this, we can make some money. They purposely targeted the United States in a form of attack, and they bragged about it, right? And so this is what's going on here, and Maduro just picked up where Chavez left off, and so it is an attack. It's a blatant attack. It's an announced attack. And to me, it's absurd that we look at it as a law and order problem. You know, this really is an attack by a foreign government and a foreign entity and a terrorist. You know, no different than flying an airplane into the World Trade Center.
So,
Okay.
so listen, this is not politics. So
Right.
I'm not trying to drive a political
Right, of course.
message, but I'm going to tell you, I'm ashamed that we had cocaine in the White House. You know, 3 years ago,
Right.
there was cocaine in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
And people try to minimize what the cocaine problem is in the U.S. It's not a small problem. It's not a little war like some of these people
Right.
want to tell you. It's a huge war. And let me tell you, we were losing it.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I can't turn around and say that we're winning it yet. We've had some success, but there is still a lot of work to be done. And maybe this will open people's eyes to it. And who knows, maybe if things get dealt with Venezuela in a certain way, that may curtail it. But at the end of the day, you know, somebody else is going to pop up somewhere that is glad to take the payoff to continue to do that. So, you know, it's not up to these countries to police themselves as much as it is. It's up to the United States to protect themselves and have to do it with whatever means necessary. If you ask me.
I love that comment.
You know,
love it.
But anyhow, listen, guys, this was fantastic. This was, you know, really, really informative. You guys obviously bring a lot of not just great knowledge, but experience behind it and the credibility behind it because of your roles, you know, in government. And first and foremost, thank you for your service, you guys, and appreciate what you guys do to help out here. And thank you for providing us a great show, because this is some fantastic content. Again, to me, the timing couldn't be better, right? There's just so much going. It's funny. Yesterday when we were doing some show prep, Jesus is like, well, I hope they don't attack tonight. You know, and I was like, well, if they do, I hope you stay on our show first, because we booked you before CNN and Fox did. So, but right now we're free and clear. But I think people have a little bit more context on this. And again, appreciate you guys making sure that we didn't make this a political show. This was really about informing of what's going on now, how it tied into us, the Zonians, with everything that we have that anniversary tomorrow going on. And it really does all, I hate to use the term tie in nicely, but it does, right, for this story. And so great job, you guys, on what you've brought to the table, what you've brought to print. Continued success. Jesus, good luck with the 3 new books there. Again, guys, fingers crossed that first one's out before Christmas. We can get it ordered and whatnot. But again, guys, thank you so much. You got any parting messages? Any red carpet treatment? It's yours, man. Give us an announcement or something.
Happy holidays.
All right.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, Will and Ricky. Thank you very much.
No, it was our pleasure as always. You know, you guys did a great job. Thanks. Continued success to you guys. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and happy New Year, guys. Take care.
Thank you very
See
much.
you next year.
Cheers. All right, there we go.
Going on there, like a dictator in power, stolen elections, narco connections inside a regime, right? Aggression towards U.S. interests, regional instability. I mean, exactly like '89, all over again.
Yeah,
and that's
agreed.
kind of why it was tied in with our show today. You know, tomorrow being the 20th, the gentlemen being a part of it. So
It really
I
did.
appreciate
You know, and you know, we've done two. This is our third Just Cause anniversary show, and we didn't want to do a similar one to the last ones because we've done that in the past, and not to belittle it or anything, you know, but you know, this was more along with what the current events are and stuff. So it was a lot of fun, very informative. You know, some great books there, and again, appreciate these guys and their service, and you know, Steve talked to him in carrying on the torch from his dad, who's a Canal Zone police officer. We had him on earlier as well, but. Hey, great show. Ricky, glad you made it back on. There's our Red Chiva saying it's time to move on. But listen, next week we have a really cool recap show. Don't miss it. But Ricky, get us out of here, man.
Hey, guys, thank you. Sorry for my microphone not working. You guys missed out on the bochinche, but we'll catch you guys next week. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you very much.
Cheers, guys.